Welcome to the Better Buildings, Better Society podcast. Twice a month, we interview interesting individuals and get insight into what they think makes buildings better members of society. Subscribe to our podcast and share with your friends. Hi, I'm Stephen Forrester, founder and principal of DMA Engineering. My passion lies in the built environment and in the mechanical systems that keep buildings running at their optimum efficiency, while at the same time provide the best possible health and comfort to their occupants. In this way, DMA is absolutely committed to making buildings better members of society. This podcast focuses on energy efficiency through the eyes and experience of building industry professionals. Together with my guest, I will lead all of us on an exploration of how to build better energy efficiency buildings, how to save our clients time and money, and offer practical advice for those interested in the built environment. Join me, a mechanical engineer, outdoor enthusiast, and green advocate as I interview guests with leading edge ideas for creating better buildings and a better society.
Hello, I'm Stephen Forrester, principal of DMA Engineering. Thanks for joining us for our first episode of Better Buildings, Better Society. This week we have Phil Jensen, co-owner of Sensible Heating and Cooling. He is an expert in traditional HVAC systems as well as alternative systems such as ground source and air source heat pumps. Phil offers a wealth of experience and knowledge in this field. We are excited to be hosting Phil and are thrilled to explore more about how ground source and air source heat pumps can make buildings better members of society. With that, it is our privilege to welcome Phil to the show and learn more about what inspires him in this industry. Welcome, Phil. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. You and I have been working together now for over 12 plus years or something along those lines.
It's been a while.
Yep. And we currently have a couple of projects going on, doing two with ground source heat pumps, and then one just a regular conventional type system up in the mountains. So those two projects have been pretty interesting. I guess the one that we're working on at Cherry Hills Village there, we're converting all those air conditioners over to a ground source heat pump system. And that's been a pretty interesting project for both of us, I think.
Yeah, that's an exciting one for me because there's so much potential for saving a lot of electricity and getting off of gas. That was the owner's goal.
Yeah, and I do remember you and I sitting on the roof looking at that going, what the heck are we going to do here? So we had to really get innovative in how we were going to go about approaching that to meet the client's goals. I think, as we're wrapping that project up here in the next couple of months, I think he'll be extremely happy with the end results.
Yeah, I know that he's really been intrigued by it, and he's really committed to trying to get off carbon, reduce his carbon footprint. So I know the owner is very excited to, once this thing gets up and running, see how it does.
Yeah. And I know that, your passion kind of got into this industry way back when by selling solar systems way back in the early 80s. So give us a little bit more about your background and how you ended up kind of where you're at today.
Yeah, I appreciate you dating me that way. So, actually, that was kind of my first, dipping my toe into the water was back in the 80s was thermal solar. And I learned how to do that installation, that type of installation. Did that for several years and then moved more into the commercial service area, kind of traditional HVAC. But I always carried with me the idea that, we needed to move towards energy conservation in buildings. So that's been sort of a theme of my career, ever since I started back in the late 70s.
Yeah. And back on the commercial side of things, you and I have worked both in the residential world and in the commercial world on a variety of projects over the years. Some projects straight just HVAC, and then some we actually did some pretty cool stuff on making buildings better members of society. One that kind of comes to mind is the building over there where is that, off of Colorado Boulevard there, that we went in there and we changed out that chiller plant and the boiler plant to a high performing boiler system and put in, the new control system, got them optimized on that type of system. So that was a pretty cool project that we both worked together on.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think that people are really starting to realize is not just we're focused on residential, sensible heating is, but in the past working in a lot of industrial and commercial applications, I don't think building managers and owners were really aware of, just how much potential there was for saving energy and conserving and, improving the mechanical systems. So, it's definitely a hot topic these days, but, with climate change and everything else, I think people have become a lot more aware.
Yeah, I think there's still some hurdles, both in the residential and commercial side of things, as we're trying to educate clients a lot more about the opportunities, and there could be just some really low hanging fruit for them to improve their buildings. So I know, we've talked a lot, and I know right now your biggest hurdle is just finding labor, and good qualified labor. And I think, there's various factors go for that's happening. So what do you think is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 and 10 years out? What would you had a crystal ball? What do you think is going to be the next big things we're going to see in those time frames?
Well, as far as the labor goes, I think, as an industry, what I've seen is we've done just a terrible job of recruiting people and getting them interested in this industry. And, one of the things that I think, we need to do a better job of is just explaining to younger people, what the opportunities are, because they're endless. And, I've never been bored in my career, and it's been a long one, but there's always been something new to learn and some new challenge. Plus the technology's changed so much that keeping up with it is really a challenge. So, what I find is that, there's a lot more interest to me in being able to, use the technical knowledge and skills, but not necessarily have to sit behind a desk all the time. So I think for kids that are restless, but, smart, they just need to be educated about what the opportunities are. I think that as a trade, what I do as a mechanical contractor is extremely interesting.
Yeah, I agree that, but we do push a lot of kids into going to college and look down on the tradespeople. And I think there needs to be a reframe of that, because you're right. In this industry, there's just going to be so much potential going forward as systems get more complicated, controls get more rolled into it. The technologies that are being developed, especially in the heat pump world, is starting to, they're going to take that to the next level. So I think, the technology, it's fast paced. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for the younger generations to get in, that's just not being conveyed well enough, that there is some really cool, exciting stuff that does go on in the building industry.
Yeah, the one thing I guess is that as the supply of labor goes down, the demand is not diminishing, it's going up too. So I think wages are going to have to go up in order to attract people into the industry and into the trades as general. But, that being said, I think that there's a lot of job opportunities where people can make a lot of money and satisfy not only their the challenges that they want to see in their career, but also they can satisfy their financial goals as well. And so I think that what we have a lot of to overcome is the stereotype of what it's like to be in the trades.
Yeah. And I think that's across the board, across all trades. I think every trades is starting to run into this, especially as the baby boomers, if you will, are starting to retire out of the industries. There's just not enough people going into it. And there's going to have to be a little bit of a mind shift, because we're going to have to maintain these buildings and build new buildings. So there's definitely going to have to be some type of mind shift to make it happen. So yeah, there's definitely market forces that are going on there. So I know that you guys are really big advocates for both air source and ground source heat pumps. And just give us a little bit of a reason why you guys are such big advocates for both the ground source and the air source, and how that influences making buildings better.
Yeah, so that bell didn't ring for me until just maybe 5 years ago. But before that, I was doing industrial refrigeration work, and that was very interesting too. But once I got into this area of heating with electricity, that really intrigued me a lot. And I guess what I didn't realize before then was just how efficient these systems are now. And So we're getting 300 and 400% efficiency out of electric heating systems. And before, electricity was just never something that I had thought was a viable alternative to heat buildings with. So what soon after I discovered that, I found out that the market for that is really growing too, and that there's a huge demand for people to be getting off of natural gas. So it started kind of slow, but what I was on a job one day, and both the husband and wife were wind turbine engineers, and they were explaining to me just how the electric grid is becoming more and more, electricity is being generated more by non-carbon based fuel sources like wind and solar and hydro, and so those sources what's really driving this. And so the more that we can use electricity to heat with, then the more we're reducing our carbon footprint and reducing the greenhouse gases. And so hopefully that can reverse, help start to reverse the trend of pouring all this carbon into the atmosphere. So that's what really got me intrigued. And so our business has really taken off since we tapped into that, and we're just finding that more and more people are more aware of it. And I'd say in the last 2 years especially, it's just become such a hot topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to become the new buzzword is electric heating, right? And a lot of people, there's still a lot of misinformation, I guess, that's out there. There's going to still need to be some education about, the clients to end users to consumers, about all that stuff that's going on. Denver is really pushing their electric heating as well, in conjunction with Xcel decarbonate, doing decarbonization of the grid here in Colorado or along the Front Range. So that, there's a big push within Xcel to do that too. So it's actually, it's really picking up steam. And I think the heat pumps, the technologies there are going to keep increasing as well. So I think there's some exciting things with the electric heating.
Yeah, I think one of the big misconceptions that people have is that heat pumps don't work. And I think, in my industry, in the mechanical contracting world, the contractors are extremely reluctant to get off of natural gas and onto heat pumps. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is just how much the technology has improved the performance of heat pumps. So the big thing is the inverter drives being able to modulate compressor motors and fan motors and have everything communicate. And that wasn't something that was even possible 20 years ago. And so now, this is translating into the residential world, and people are like, that's probably the most common question that I get, which is, well, I've been told that heat pumps don't work in Colorado, or heat pumps don't work in the mountains. And so then when I start to explain some of the technology improvements and things like that, then people want to convert. And, last week I was talking with an architect, and, when I explained it to him, he got very excited. And he said, yeah, I have another architect who's a friend who didn't understand any of this either. So even, at the professional levels, the engineering and architectural levels, there's a lot of misconceptions about heat pumps.
Yeah, I think that's a big, the industry has to do a lot more education on exactly how the technologies work. Not everybody needs to be an expert, but they just need to have the finer points addressed to them. And again, like you're saying, the air source heat pumps, now they go down to almost, negative 13 degrees with 100% heating capacity, which, 5 years ago was unheard of. So that technology is just moving fast. And we'll still see that to happen. So when did you become first passionate about getting into the built environment?
I'd have to say it was back in the 80s when I started learning about thermal solar, because it just made sense to, try to draw power sources from, places that weren't traditional. And so I think that, that happened actually very early in my career. And then I got interested by passive solar and, Trome walls and, all kinds of different things that were available out there where, power didn't have to be generated to be, used efficiently. So I would say, I've been a huge advocate of this since the early 80s.
Yeah. Now, if I remember correctly, your first job was actually putting siding on buildings, wasn't it? Isn't that what your first job way up there in Wyoming? Yeah, I think you told me that. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the scariest part of my career. I was 19 years old and walking on high steel in Wyoming and 40-mile-an-hour winds. And back then, OSHA wasn't a thing, so we were pretty much cowboys, just doing whatever we wanted to in terms of construction. And I think I look back on some of that stuff and think about what the safety standards are now, and I'm surprised that A, I'm not in jail, or B, dead. So those were kind of different days back then.
Yeah, we all look back at our youth and go, man, we did some crazy stuff. So yeah, so
Yeah.
it's what makes us today, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm happy that the safety standards are what they are today. They're a lot better. But anyway, yeah, that was kind of how I got started in the career, was putting siding on industrial buildings up in Wyoming, and then when I came back to Colorado, I started in the HVAC field, and literally was putting sheet metal ducts into houses, and then that kind of turned into learning about air conditioning and boilers, and then that one thing led to another, and I started my first business when I was 33, sold that, and then was out of business ownership for about 7 years, and now I'm back as a co-owner of Sensible Heating.
Yeah, what do they say about entrepreneurs, right? We ruin ourselves by being horrible employees or something like that, right? Once we own a business, it's hard to be a good employee. So yeah.
Right. Well, and being a business owner, you get to work just half the time, but you get to pick which 12 hours a day it is.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you wish you had known when you first started in this industry? So if it's that, go back in the time machine, like what piece of information do you wish you would have had way back when?
I guess I'd have been, if somebody had told me what the opportunities were, then I think I would have been more engaged and interested in all the aspects of the field. And there's just so many different opportunities, and you can kind of pick a career path. And if I was talking to the younger me, I would say, well, you can go in this direction, you can go in this direction, and here's how you can get there. So I would encourage young people, if they've got somebody that's been doing this kind of work for 15 or 20 years, to sit down and talk to them and ask them what they're interested in. And I coach a lot of people in their 20s and 30s about the different opportunities, and some of them get it and some of them don't, but I think this field is just getting more and more interesting all the time.
So yeah, kind of going along, that's we're talking a little bit about the side of the younger selves and the youth that's going into it. And you kind of mentioned a little bit about the client you had that was the wind turbine engineers. So, the work we do is like, the mechanical side of the work is very infrastructure, if you will. And it's once the building is done, it's not really seen, but if it doesn't work right, it becomes a big issue, because it's hard to go back and fix things after it's been installed and there comes to it. So with that, with your work, what do you think is the biggest impact that you can have on the building occupants in the building itself?
I think that integrating everything together is super important. And I think, one of the things that you and I talk about a lot is building commissioning. And that applies not just to the commercial and industrial world, but I also think that's becoming even more important in the residential world. And the reason I say that is because it's, when a building isn't working right, or the mechanical systems aren't working right, it never really seems to come down to just one thing. It seems like there's multiple things that need to be addressed. And it's not just the mechanical systems. I think integrating, thinking the building itself as a system is really important too, because, we talk about insulation, we talk about ventilation, we talk about the mechanical systems, we talk about controls, and all those things work together. And if they're not working together, then it's not going to make the building as efficient or as livable as possible. So I think that, the trades tend to look at each other and say, well, that's their problem. And it's not really the case. More and more, I have come to realize that, working together with all these systems, working at their optimal performance and talking to each other is really what's best.
Yeah, exactly. And you and I work together on a lot of luxury residential homes where, the expectations are extremely high. They should be high on every home. But I think in the luxury residential, we see it a little, that tends to be a little bit more of that leading edge, and the occupants have, they want what they want, and it's our job to give them that. So, we always have to be looking holistically at the windows, how how the mechanical systems are going to interact with that. What can we do to make the mechanical system as small as possible? That's by better windows, better insulation. So yeah, taking that holistic view of it, and then actually how is that occupant going to use the space is critical as well. So, it takes a knowledgeable team to figure that out. And I think, that's one of the expertise you and Dan bring to the projects that we have worked on together. So, I think that's been really cool. So what are you currently researching or has struck your curiosity in the market?
The thing that's really piqued my curiosity is just being able to integrate the solar systems with heating with electricity. And the PV systems have really made a difference. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, and it really did have to do with these wind turbine engineers that I talked to, that I realized that there's so many solar systems, PV systems on people's roofs these days, and I don't know why it just hasn't hit anybody why we're not using the full capacity of those systems to be able to use to heat the house. And it's been really interesting talking to potential customers, because when they talk to my competitors are always trying to downgrade the value of the heat pump system. So I think what's really interesting about that is just, trying to educate people about how to integrate all the systems in their house and not look at them as separate things.
Yeah, so I think it comes right back to what we were speaking to a little earlier, was the holistic mindset, right? We got to have that holistic mindset of how what's going to be put into the building and how it's all going to interact with each other, and where's the synergies that can be gained, and reduce the energy consumption due to the HVAC system, and then how can we offset that energy using technologies like solar, and then whatever is bought from the grid, as the grid gets cleaned up and decarbonized, we'll be, we're going to be ahead of the curve. So I think, right. So that's the path we're trying to get to by trying to get our clients off of natural gas and go to more electric heating.
When I first got into the geothermal part of this, I expected all of our jobs to be in, large luxury homes and, people that could afford it and things like that. And what I'm really finding, though, is just the opposite, is that people, we put in geothermal systems for people that are living in, old homes in Denver that are only like 1,200 square feet. And it really has not that much to do with the size of the house or even the budget of the people living in the house, as it does as to their awareness of what they want to do for not just for their home, but for the environment as well. So I found that really interesting too, is just, what's motivating people to do this. And I get people that are all over the map, but the house we're doing up in Louisville next month, these people are extremely committed. They both work for the Nature Conservancy, and they're just very committed to doing what they can to reduce the carbon footprint and then tell their neighbors about it. And so it's really interesting to watch what's happening with people and their awareness of what's going on with the climate.
You're doing your job well because you're listening to the client, you're giving the client what they want, and you're reacting to that with it. So I guess what's an overall theme that you're hearing typically from building occupants about what is the most important thing? You've got some really cool clients that are, doing the wind turbines, the nature conservatory. So those are, definitely minded people are very conscious about the environment. overall, what's kind of a general trend that you're hearing from a lot of your clients, and what's important to them?
So when I go out on an estimate, people seek us out because of how we message our marketing. And so they want to know, well, I've got a limited budget. What do you think I should do first? So I kind of paint the whole picture for them, but, my approach is very holistic. So, if people haven't really insulated or done windows or done an energy audit is a great first step, I think, because they can find out where the leaks are in their building and do blower door testing, and it's extremely inexpensive compared to everything else. It's only like $400 or $500, and Excel Energy does a rebate of $200, so they can get some really good key information about what to do. And if the right thing is not to do something with their heating system until they insulate, then that's what I advocate. So I'm not going to go in there and say, well, geothermal is going to be the be all and end all. I tell them, get your house tightened up, and then let's talk about that. Or if you need solar, do that. Or, we sort of lay out a game plan and say, hey, these are the steps. It may take you 5 years to get there, but, at least take a step.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's great stuff, right? I mean, laying out a plan for a client to actually understand how it's all interrelated and how it's going to work together. How did COVID change those conversations, or did it at all?
Oh, it changed it a ton. And yeah, that's been very interesting too, because I heard a ton of people, I'd go in and I would talk to, the husband who had always worked outside the home, and he would say, well, my wife's been wanting air conditioning now for, the last 5 years, but now that I'm working at home, I guess I want air conditioning too. So finally something's getting done. So that's, people are working from home more. They want to be comfortable. With all the smoke we've had in this area, they're really concerned about indoor air quality and ventilation. They're worried about air filtration. They're worried about air purification. They want to know how to get the viruses out of the air, so we're talking a lot more about indoor air quality products. And so it's, the demand has just gone through the roof for us in terms of, increasing people's comfort and efficiency and, just the quality of their living.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? The COVID definitely brought up conversations about indoor air quality. I mean, it's kind of becoming a hot topic, which it needed to be all along, right? It's been one of those things that we've never really talked about as much, especially as you made mention earlier about, tightening up the infiltration of a house so we can make the HVAC system smaller. But now, the air that's in there needs to be treated a lot better so that we don't have poor indoor air quality. We may have an energy efficient home, but we may have bad indoor air quality. So there's a trade-off there that needs to be, balanced out to make sure that we're doing both things correctly. So that, that is definitely a new thing. And then you made mention of the fires that are happening as well. So that, a little bit of climate change that's going on there. But what do you think is going to be the biggest impact of climate change in the work that you do at Sensible Heating?
I would say that what we need to do a better job of, I think, is letting our people know exactly what the benefits are to the client for, these different devices that we have. And the technology on those has improved a lot too. So we have ways of doing air filtration and air purification with ion generators. And, helping our people understand to look at what we can do for clients in a holistic way, and, helping them make it so that their clients understand what the possibilities are, and then helping fulfill those needs that they have. And I think as long as our people are being customer centric and helping our customers understand what's available, because lots of times people just don't know, and there's so many choices out there right now. And even people on very limited budgets are able to take advantage of a lot of this stuff at a reasonable cost. So I think that, the more that our people are aware of what's available and they can make our customers aware of that, then I think that serves everybody very well.
Yeah, it comes right back to the education piece. We need to educate our clients, and then we also need to make sure that our the people on our teams are staying educated as well and up to the latest stuff, so that we can make sure that we're getting that information out to the clients. So it's a big education piece all the way around.
Yeah, one thing that we do on a consistent basis is we put blog topics out. I think every week we have a blog topic, and so we work with our marketing team to educate our customers. And the other thing is that what I think you touched on very recently was trying to listen to our customer to see what's driving them and what's motivating them. Because a lot of times I'm learning a lot of things about newer technologies that I didn't realize existed. And I've got one client who's a physicist at CU, so he loves researching as much as he can. And he put in a heat pump water heater that was a split system that I had no idea existed, and it's something that is common in Japan but not here. And so I learned about that, and so they're keeping an open mind as a contractor, I think, is extremely important, because there's just so many ways of improving what we do and what's available out there.
Yeah, I think that's a key takeaway there, right? I mean, with climate change, we got to keep an open mind and look at all and everything, because there's good stuff that's out there. We don't know about all of it, and bring to market what we can, to help the clients and help the buildings, be as efficient as they can. So it's very important to keep that open mind. Especially as we had alluded to earlier, the technology is changing so fast. We got to keep an open mind, look at it all, evaluate it, and figure out what's going to be the best fit that is there. So with that, if you had extra money on a project, right, it very rarely happens, but if you had extra money on a project, how would you recommend a client use it? And then kind of just a little bit clarifier there. What's the one thing you wish every project would incorporate, but typically doesn't, mainly due to budget? So I guess maybe two questions in one there.
Yeah. So my preference would be that somebody who just had work done, spend money in two areas. One is to plan out their 5-year timeline on what they want to do with their structure, whether it be a commercial or house or whatever. Take that extra time to plan it out and really think about what they want as a goal for the house or the building. And then the second thing would be, at the end, is to measure and make sure that all the systems are working optimally through commissioning or whatever, and then do a report card and see how close they got to what their goals were. And I think that doing those two things would help everybody really understand what the process is, and how it played out, and if they got to where they wanted to go. And I think people would be a lot better off if they did just those two things.
So yeah, so it sounds like you're big. I mean, and I think those are great. I think those are great. I mean, I think you nailed it there. I think there's just a lot that can be done with making sure that how well did we actually do, verify it, and then continually monitor it to make sure that we don't get any creep, and that the building is staying exactly where it needs to be, or like the big things that just seem to always fall off on every project. But so it sounds like the advice you're giving to somebody would be to, when designing or purchasing a building or thinking about the building, is lay out that plan. What do you think the next 5 years looks like, and what do you want to do in that time horizon, and then build a solid plan to get you to there.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. My son just bought a house that was built in 1948, and so we've been sort of working together on, these are the things that can be done, from an energy efficiency standpoint, and even just a case like that, this is something that is a very useful process, because in 5 years it'll be something that he'll either want to continue to live in or maybe sell to the next person, but then you're leaving basically a better place for that next person.
Yeah, and the money put in is still there, right? It's not like the money disappeared. If you're making an energy efficiency, the money you're putting in will pay back. There's value in that money that you're putting in now to the next occupant, so you can recoup that money when you leave.
Yeah, no, I think it's just part of being responsible, not just to yourself, but to, being a good community member and being responsible to the planet too, for that matter.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right, as we're kind of winding down here, what's an example of a building or a design mistake or failure that you experienced, and what did you learn from it?
I don't know how much time you have.
Yeah, exactly. We're always continually learning.
Right. I've seen some really badly executed control systems in commercial buildings that just absolutely drove me crazy. And it was one of those things that it was very poorly planned and thought out. And then once it was in place and it wasn't working correctly, then it was very, very difficult to backtrack and make it right. And as it turned out, in the process of learning why the controls weren't working correctly, there was a lot of issues that came up with the existing mechanical system that would have been a whole lot easier to fix and correct before getting into the controls. And so instead of ready, aim, fire, it was more like fire, ready, aim. And it was completely backwards. So, I think that, again, that comes back to, working with professionals to understand, what's the goal, what's the target, what are we trying to do here, and then execute it, and then, really pay attention and do some investigation, especially on existing buildings. Do some investigation and figure out what's there before you start doing anything.
Yes, I think that is definitely a good takeaway from that, and how we, just because we're implementing a new technology or a new controls, it may not be the end all to be all, right? There could be some other things that are there that we need to investigate and thoroughly understand. So what is your favorite building and why?
So I would have to say that my favorite place is the NREL facility out in Golden, Colorado. And what I like about it is not just the building itself, but the concept. They are continually trying to find ways of reducing energy consumption in facilities, and they take advantage of wind currents and passive solar gain and all kinds of different technology. And when I first saw it, it was just a very small facility, and it just kept growing and growing. And so now it's really state of the art. And what information is coming out of that facility is just pretty amazing sometimes to think about the things that we do differently now because of that.
Yeah, that great laboratory that we have here, that we can all, when we get a chance to do a tour, it's awesome to go and see what they're doing. So what is your favorite place? Where do you like to go? I know you like to write a lot. So where's your favorite place to go hang out, maybe do some writing?
Well, next week we're flying out to the coast of Oregon, and we're going to spend a week there. And I would have to say, if it's next to the ocean, that's probably my favorite place.
Very nice. So yeah, we talked a little bit about COVID, but what's the biggest lesson you learned in the past year about creating better buildings?
I think that people are much more focused on, if they're going to be indoors as much as they have been, they're really trying to figure out ways to be able to, increase their comfort levels, make it a safe place to be, and, just enjoy their indoor environment. So I think that a lot of things have gotten neglected for a long time. People are in office buildings, and I think people are going to still be working from home a lot. They're not going to be going back to the offices as quickly. And, even when they do go back to offices, they're going to want those facilities to be a safe place to work and a comfortable place to work. And because of the carbon footprint issues, they're going to also want these places to be energy efficient. So it's sort of like the perfect storm of, COVID sort of pointed out a lot of things that, the deficient buildings are going to have to be improved to make them, for whatever happens down the road. So So I think there was a ton of lessons that we'll be learning, from this experience for many, many years.
Yeah. So for someone listening and they would like to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Easiest way is through the website, sensibleheat.net. We do virtual estimates. We do, and they can contact us through email. That's probably the easiest way. If they want to talk to a human person, then our phone number is 720-876-7166. And that's probably the two easiest ways to get a hold of us.
Anything else you'd like to add, Phil, before we just close this up?
Just thanks for the opportunity. I think this is a great forum, and I hope it has a lot of success. And I look forward to hearing more of these podcasts from your other partners.
Yeah, we're excited about putting these on, and I thank you for participating as we work through our very first one. Once we get a little bit more grounded on these, we'll have you back and we can see what happens then. And I think it was a great talk. I really got a lot out of it, and how, just really the education piece came up a lot, and then listening to our clients. I think that's big, and I think that's huge that you shared how you're learning a lot from your clients, and how as you're teaching them, they're teaching you. So it's a two-way street. Being open-minded about the solutions that we can bring to them, and how to go about and bring about really good solutions in a holistic way by looking at the entire building, doing the good work of having the blower door test done, looking at the insulation, the windows. I mean, making a small HVAC system makes it very affordable, and then we can do really highly efficient by spending the money in the right ways. And I think that's a great thing to be doing as an advocate for the industry. I think that's great that Sensible Heat is doing that. So that's great. Want to thank everybody for listening, and hopefully you were able to take something away from that. And just visit us at DMA Engineering or dma-eng.com if you want to learn more about the episode and episodes coming along. So thanks, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.